Hello everybody, we're gonna get started here in just a second. Bear with me, I'm still setting up for the event. And I need to make sure that I'm gonna stay hydrated because it's gonna be a long one this time. We got 21 people to get through today. So it's gonna be a packed session. But I'll be with you momentarily, so bear with me. All right. Time to get into the swing of things. Let's do this. It's good to see everyone already here. Lovely to see you all. How's everybody doing? Oh, I need to turn on my camera though. Hey, Falco. I'm doing good, man. Doing good. It's been a busy week, but I guess I shouldn't complain too much about that. Okay, lights, camera, action. Let's do this thing. Oh, that is definitely not the right thing. That is definitely not the right thing either. What the hell is going on? Okay, what are we doing here? Hey! Oh, got there in the end. Hello, Ains Golden. It's good to see you here. Hello, Jay. Lovely to see you too. But yeah, it's been going pretty good. I've got my water, I've got my drinks, got all the people set up. Well, maybe not all of them, because it got quite confusing at the end. How many people do we have here today? So we got 19. I think I'm missing 2. So in the meantime, let me see who I missed from the chat here. Justin is not in there. Justin, cool. Let's get Justin involved into the party. Where's Justin's work? Let me just get everything dragged in here. Okay. So many images. Yeah, we can do that later as well. Hello, Sundar. Hello, Kovaninski. Hope you're both doing well. Yeah, it's been going good. So let me give you an introduction of what's happening on my side. So I just finished like our first interview for a workshop organization position that we have open at BE currently. It's the first time that we're really trying to do it in this organized kind of a manner. So I really took it like pretty seriously this time around. I really spent time on like preparing the questions and all that kind of stuff so that we can get like the right person for the job as well. Because yeah, we're kind of in need of having a person that can just look after the workshops with my support as well. So I had one of those calls today, then I have another one scheduled for tomorrow. And yeah, I think the rest of the week is going to be pretty busy with team challenge meetings. So I'm currently also a mentor in our own team challenges as well. And yeah, I'm supporting another mentor, and it's all kicking off basically. It's all kicking off. So it's been pretty busy, but hey, I wouldn't have it any other way. What is another interesting thing that's been happening? There's one. Oh, we onboarded like a new person for our course as well. So we have another person jumping in, working on the course. We're still reaching out to other people as well. And the hope is that we currently have... The current hope is to get to 4 or 5 people to work on the course with us. With, again, myself as a supporting role in that as well. So yeah, that's been kicking off as well. And then yesterday we had our final, at least in that form, portfolio review. Because yeah, for people that weren't there yesterday, I decided to be open about my feelings about the portfolio reviews. I felt that just a lot of it was just the same thing over and over. And I think it's kind of time to retire it because I kind of feel myself getting drained by doing them as well. So I kind of want to do like a bigger overview video where I just go through like, hey, here's like 10 or 20 portfolio tips at a certain point that are laid out in like a really nice manner, and have that as a resource that everyone can look back onto. That would be the goal of that, instead of doing these pretty long, pretty repetitive sessions. I don't really want to keep on doing them. Not in that form, at least. So yeah. And otherwise, honestly, just cracking on, you know? Making cool shit at work that I can't talk about. But yeah. Otherwise, just cracking on. But yeah. How is everyone in the chat doing? So Sergey's doing good. Watching my new favorite stream. Oh my god. Thank you, Sergey. Appreciate it. It's been a while since I watched any streams of myself. I kind of should get back into it at a certain point, because I do really enjoy... I used to watch like concept artists, like a lot. Like there were a couple of people that I used to watch like every night almost, and they were just like really chill, really laid back, just like painting as they were talking to people. Um, I do want to get into that as well. They were just so nice, you know, so wholesome. So maybe that would be a cool thing to pick back up. There was also this other stream that I watched, which was actually like really interesting as well. If you're a game dev and you kind of want to get a look into the past, I think her tag was Cozy by the Campfire or something like that. And she was making levels in the old Quake editor, which was really interesting to watch because, yeah, it is very manual, very out of date, and like obviously like pretty restrictive, right? Because we're talking about like the original games. I think she was like making levels in like Quake 1 or something like that. But it was super interesting to have a look at those streams. And they were like pretty short as well, but they were like really interesting to kind of have a look at, to see what people were doing before we got like all these fancy like Unreal Engines and Unities and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. I need to potentially get back to that. Oh, let me not shut down my music, please. We'll need that to survive today's session. Let's close down everything else though. Well, see, that's a good question, Rodrigo. I don't know too many of them either. I know that Dynasty, I don't know if he still does them. Dynasty used to do like streams like fairly regularly. So that's like one that I would occasionally watch. But I think the timing for me was like pretty awkward, so I tended to slip out of it like really quickly. But there's not too many environment art streams that are still active. There was one girl from the Philippines that she was trying to get into the games industry that I used to watch like semi-regularly for like at least a couple of weeks. Really interesting to see how she was doing things. But other than that, I don't really know anyone who's like still doing it. So yeah, I'm afraid that I don't have any recommendations. That's why I probably deviated towards like more concept art or more just like 2D art, because there's way more of that stuff on Twitch, especially. Because yeah, like environment art, I don't know too many of it. So yeah. Unfortunately, no recommendations on that one. But if you have any recommendations in the chat, feel free to drop them. Would be cool to have some more recommendations. All right. Let's get cracking, shall we? So for people who are new to the stream, first of all, welcome. It's lovely to have you. Second of all, feel free to drop any questions that you have about the video games industry, environment art, like personal development, any kind of that stuff. Feel free to drop it in the chat as I go along and give critique. And yeah, we'll discuss it. Irfan Khan, Stylized Station. Ha, yeah. I personally don't like them. They are definitely good at playing the YouTube game, but I don't necessarily agree with their content. So yeah, and maybe not their style of collaborating with other people is also not a thing that I agree with necessarily, but probably don't have to go too far into that. Sergio is saying, I could start streaming if someone wants. I feel like a newbie on this. I do find it really fun to do, but you're not spending a whole bunch of time working, right? It's kind of like what I'm doing right now, right? I'll give feedback, but the majority of the time we're just talking and we're like deviating, and it's supposed to be very spontaneous, right? Which is honestly like pretty pretty difficult to do when you want to focus on an environment art and you're going through a pipeline on a prop, and then you also have to interact with a chat or something like that. It's it can be pretty intense, but that regardless of that, just have fun with it. I had a lot of fun when I was streaming. I mean, when I was streaming like environment art creation, it's just I just didn't have the time to keep up with it anymore. Flip Normals is actually a pretty good recommendation. It's not specifically environment art because I think they're both character artists, right, in the VFX industry. But yeah, if they stream, that would probably be entertaining to watch. There are some good channels out there that are more focused on like indie game dev, which are pretty good. I think Thomas Brush is a good one. The Game Maker's Toolkit, he doesn't stream, but that's more just like a recommendation out there. But I think Thomas Brush does some streams where he plays games that people submit. So, and I see when I get people like that on my feed, like that means that they're kind of gaining in popularity because I'm very specific in what I watch. So it's cool to see people coming up in that space. So yeah, that could be an interesting one to check out as well. Falco is saying, I've heard bad things about Stylized Station. Yeah, me too. I've heard and I've seen and I've talked to people that just didn't really like work with them, or yeah, just a bad taste in people's mouths. That's what I'll say. Unfortunately. So this is the thing that I'll do, right? Like this is my personal benchmark when it comes to if I trust someone or not, right? And this is very surface level, right? But if you put yourself in front of your content, you're already gaining like a couple of points from me because I know that you, like for example, that's what I'm doing, right? I work in the video games industry and I make content that is catered towards getting people into the video games industry. So that means that I am linked to the content that I make, right? There's no two ways about that. But if people try to some sort of like obscure that or try to hide it or whatever, that is usually not a great sign. Yeah, that is sort of like the initial benchmark that I kind of use for that. Cool. But like I said before, keep adding questions and topics in the chat if you want me to discuss anything. Let me switch over and then we can start cracking. Hello, Giovani. Quixel does have some good videos. Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say they don't make any new videos though, right? Well, so they do. They actually do. But they're under the Epic Games banner. So, dang it. I forgot the name of the project again. But there's this project, we discussed it on the stream already, but there's this really cool project that they did where they made like a spaceship that had to be in Unreal Engine for Fortnite. And that was like a full presentation on like how they did it, performance optimizations and cool workflow techniques that they used. Let me see if I can quickly find it. It's probably going to be the last post on their ArtStation. So let me just quickly look it up. No, not Electric Dreams. Let's have a quick look. There we go. So Unreal Engine for Fortnite Talisman. That's what I was referring to. So they have like this entire presentation where they go through, okay, how do you optimize a project, like the art tools that they used. Let's see.
That's the actual.
And this was like really interesting to watch, especially from like at this point where they really talk about like how to cram as much visual fidelity compared to the optimization that you get into the whole thing. So I'll share that in the chat as well. But yeah, that was a really, really interesting stream. Talisman demo, there we go. Thank you, Sundar. Where is my chat here? There we go. That was really interesting. I really found that like presentation like really, really interesting to watch. And I'm always keen to see what they throw out there, basically. But yeah. Cool. With that being said, let's jump into some stuff over here. So we're just going to do it by latest, right? So we're going to go to Jack John first. Yep, Jack John. Jack John is currently working on a medieval tavern that is set in hell. Okay. Cool. Very edgy, very metal, you know? Can agree to that. So you say that this is like your second year university project, and the prompts for this project are tavern and tyranny. The storytelling aspects to suggest it's a tyrannical world will be added later. Okay, that's kind of... If it is so core to the world, I would have expected those to be in already. But you're saying I would appreciate any criticism on the lighting, texturing, and anything else that screams out. I'm currently working on the vertex painting to make the textures randomized. Cool. Okay. So you're saying that you want to make like the textures randomized, but there is a lot of just repetition that is currently happening, right? And just like really weird, like a really weird use of the textures that you currently have. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we look at this roof, I mean, and all the other roofs as well, there's a lot of repetition. So yeah, a lot of repetition. Because it's literally, I think in this case, it's literally made out of individual tiles that are just all using the same UV set, or like a couple of tiles that use the same UV set, and then just duplicate them all over the place, right? You can sort of like patch that up with vertex painting, but you need to actually go back to the root of it and have bigger sets of tiles that have that randomization built in with the texture, and then you can use vertex paint on top of that. Because I don't want you to use vertex painting as like a band-aid on top of it to like basically get rid of a problem, right? Because the problem is still going to remain there. I can promise you that. So that is one thing that I would definitely do. So that would mean retexture or UV on the roof tiles. And the same can be said about like some of these textures on the walls as well. For example, this arch, right? It just has like plain wrong UVs. This is just like a tileable that you just have like lying around, which might be wood, but that is not what like a wooden archway is built like, right? So we need to actually dig a little bit deeper and actually go into how is something constructed. So how is something built? And then obviously we're going to use references for that, right? Because if we're unsure about how something is built, or anything, if we are unsure about anything really, that means that we don't know enough about it, and we need to hunt for better references in this case. I know that you added your reference board in there as well. So let me have a quick look. Yeah, so you have a bunch of references in there already, but I cannot see wooden door frames, right? So you kind of have, you don't even have like a wooden door frame next to your doors really. So that's what I mean, right? Like, and this is something that I did myself as well, right? I'm not sure if you're doing the same thing, but I made reference board because I thought that I needed to do it. But you actually need to make a reference board because you think that you're going to use it, or you are going to use it at some point, right? So that's why I focus on, hey, do you know how this is built? If not, you need more references and really just teach yourself how something is built. If you have like a doorway that's made out of wood, how is that constructed, right? Like 2 long pillars on the sides, then you have like kind of cut out like corner sections there. And then you probably have like a beam connecting the two somehow at the least, right? Because it can't just be a single module that is just like, oh, it just has like a tileable slapped on top of it, right? We want to pay attention to those details because we want things in the worlds that we create to be relatable to us as people living in an actual world, right? So yeah, that would be something to watch out for. Lots of repetition on the rooftop as well, which takes up a huge space in your scene as well, right? Same thing here can be applied to the windowsills too, and the windows as well, right? So all of those things, like think about like how they're constructed and try to create them as they are constructed in real life as well. Cool. So let's say you're saying that you're working on vertex painting to make the textures more randomized. That could be good for some of these like wooden plank fences, right? But yeah, so that's not necessarily a bad idea. Last thing that I'll say about like the assets, right? Like same thing here. I'm expecting to see more detail. If you have a stone tileable and you want to add that on top of like a pillar, then we need to make up for the fact that we can't build those edges into our normal information, right? So let me take a step back. So usually if we wanna make something look really detailed, we do a high to low poly bake, and then we use that normal map to fake details that we can't create with geometry, right? But if you're not using a dedicated normal map, we have to then add geometry in to compensate for the fact that we don't have a normal map, right? And that has to be done within certain limits as well, because we just can't like add a shit ton of geometry, right? That's why we have normal maps in the first place, to compromise for the amount of geometry that we otherwise would need. But yeah, think about those things as well. Like make sure that you add like more details into those meshes too. And the same can be said about especially the silhouettes, right? So having a silhouette that has seen some stuff, especially medieval buildings, right? So you have like your support beams here, which is cool. And then you can kind of have your rooftop again. But there's going to be some sag just from the weight of the roof that is going to be supported by like all these wooden support slats, right? So think about that too, especially on silhouette. Silhouettes are like the most important thing in the entire scene, because that's where people look at the most, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Just a quick couple of notes, because you wanted to get criticism on the lighting and the texturing, right? So we kind of talked about the texturing side already. I would say on the lighting side, if you're talking about, hey, this is a medieval tavern in hell, I'm not seeing hell yet. What I'm expecting is the Doom levels of hell, right? Where you have an orange background, but like a portal to hell. Like, I think the first, well, not the first one, like where the new one that came out in 2016 or something like that, right? So I'm not talking about the 90 Dooms, but I'm talking about like when they re-released them, where you have just this hellish portal in the backdrop. I want to see something like that. You have to overemphasize those things. Because currently, hell is missing. So we need to overemphasize on key elements. right? That's what I will say. So I'm expecting like, I don't know, like a literal portal that is like in the background or something like that. Could be cool. Hell is missing. And Hell has arrived in the chat. Hello. Hello, Hell. How are you doing? Sundar was asking a question, so I'm trying to do the same workflow as well. In that aspect, how can we have two sets of vertex colors? So you don't necessarily need to store... I mean, you can have more than 4 colors in your vertex color if you really want to, right? Like I've never had to do that myself because honestly, 4 channels for the stuff that I was doing was always enough. But there are videos and tutorials on this on the Unreal Engine forums that talk about like how you can create like more than 4 channels if you need them. Yeah, because I don't think, yeah, you can't have like 2 separate sets of vertex colors, right? Because then if you want like a new vertex data, you're basically making a duplicate of that model that has like separate vertex color data or something like that, or like a new instance, depending on which workflow you use. But yeah. Is it material layering? No. At least I don't think so. Because material layering is dependent on ID masks, right? So that's a different way of storing... that's basically a different way of storing masking information. Because if we really look at it, right? Like vertex color is just a way of storing masking data that is stored on the individual vertices of that model, right? Material layering, you make that differentiation by using an ID mask, which is basically a random sample of colors, and it's going to use those colors to then differentiate between different layers of your material, right? So it's just a different way of storing that information. So the benefit there is they both have like benefits and drawbacks, right? So for example, if you store information into a texture, that means that we now have an additional texture that we need to load in, which is also gonna have to be stored on the hard drive, right? Which is gonna take up texture space, needs to be loaded in, all that kind of stuff. Vertex color data is really cheap, but it also dissipates whenever you walk away from a model because we have to optimize a model's density over the distance that we are away from it, right? This is referred to as LODs, so level of detail. So what usually happens is you have your pristine model, and then you have, that is your LOD0, so that is going to be your highest density model. And then as you walk away further from it, it's going to go down to lower density models and meshes. Same thing happens on the material side as well. But yeah, so that means that if you're storing important masking information on your vertex color, that means that that is also going to be destroyed because it's going to be, yeah, removing vertices over time, right? Like over distance that you're from it. So that's a drawback there. Yeah, cool. Slight tangent aside, Jack on, thank you so much for posting your work. Let's go to the next person, which is Shawn. Shawn has been working on a machine gun, which someone else gave some really, really cool comments and critiques on already, actually. So, and I'm just going to be repeating the same thing. So we're going to keep this like relatively short. I think you got a really cool base. So the base is great. What I want to see more is wear and tear. And what I mean by that is, how was this used, right? Like, how was this gun used? Because even here you can see like this slide going back and forth, so making like a bunch of scratches here, right? And then this is basically ejecting empty shells, right? So we're probably gonna see like a bunch of scratching down here as well. And then this is gonna be pulled back by if you're like this can be a manual lever as well, I think. So you're gonna have wear and tear here from you just pulling it back, right? So all that kind of stuff I want to see. And this honestly takes the most amount of time. You need to go and be a real nerd about this and go to actual websites that have like 1,000 images for a singular gun and try to find all these little details and embed those into the gun. Yeah. Let's see. Also, another thing that I'll add here. So the stripes, or like the wooden stripes here, they really feel generated, right? They're all just like straight lines. Where if you actually look, if you think about it, right? What is happening when you have a stock like this is you're gonna peel away, and you're gonna like peel away the layers of the wood. So there's a great example here. Hello, can I do a rectangle, please? Let me just pull this up here. So you can see that's why you have this like really cool patterns where you have a bigger distance here because how should I explain this? Like the top surface is bigger, right? And then the more you go to a side surface, the shorter these lines become. Right? Because we're literally looking at like the side of a piece of wood that is being like carved out. Right? So think about it that way. Cool, that's just like the 1 cent that I wanted to add. Yeah, because most of the other stuff was going to be... well, you brought it up yourself as well. You have some cool references. Yeah. That's part of the texturing issue. Yeah, I would say, honestly, you have some good references there. Just, yeah, use them, right? Really go into the nitty-gritty details. Paint it all out yourself, like have those little edges there. We do, if you are a Workshop Access tier member, we actually have a really great workshop from Giovani who talks about creating realistic gun medals, actually. So this would be perfect for you. Yeah, cool. Great little update, Shawn. Love to see it. And we're going to be moving on to the next person. So next person is Con. Con added some last minute updated textures, updated images, but we're not going to be focusing on those because most of the stuff that I was going to bring up is not necessarily going to be covered in those necessarily, right? So let's switch on over to Con. Where's Con? There's Con. So Con is working on this beautiful tattoo shop. I would like to get feedback on how I can make it more interesting. Yeah, on how can I make improvements and make the scene more interesting? Yeah, okay. My goal is to have a complete scene in my portfolio, and hence I have chosen this environment, which isn't too complicated. This is because I usually lose motivation before I complete a scene. So that usually is because you're picking something above what you're currently comfortable of doing. I did like a really great live stream about how to create your own environments. If you want to check that out, that is going to definitely be helpful if you struggle with any sort of this stuff. So go check that out on our channel as well. That being said, Let's have a look here. So how do you make this scene interesting? Here's where you get to the point where you're gonna have to invest like a whole bunch of time to make it more interesting than it currently is, right? But that's where you get into the territory of like, oh, maybe you lose motivation when doing so. No, sorry, Vedant, you can't. We asked people to submit like 1 hour before so that I can like set it up. So we'll see you in the next week. But yeah, so what I'm gonna say is I want to see more storytelling, right? Right now we have a street, but there's nothing really happening there, right? And how far you take that storytelling is up to you, really. Because honestly, environment art is storytelling. That's the core premises of what we get to do. So that's what I want to see as well. So that means, okay, we have like a bakery, we have a tattoo shop. That is cool. Can we do something more to elevate it to like the next level, right? So what kind of street is this? Like, who runs this shop? Like, maybe there's like a little bit of a feud going on between the bakery and the tattoo shop, right? It's very stereotypical that, like, I don't know, people tend to look down on like a tattoo shop because that's like, oh, that's alternative and bleh, blah. I mean, it's kind of eroding away now, but that used to be the case, right? So this could be an example of a story that goes to the next level, right? Where you have this like divide between the two, and maybe this is like more dirty, more worn, there's stuff on the floor, and then this neighbor is trying to kind of keep stuff clean on his side of the thing, right? That could be one area of storytelling, right? You can also just like lean into location logic a little bit more, which is a thing that I talked about yesterday, but it's a something that I use a lot. So what I mean by that is, as you're constructing a world, location logic to me is literally looking at daily life and what we can integrate into our environments. It's like the logical layer, right? Like the stuff that no one really tends to think about. So what I mean by that is, okay, garbage collection. Right? So garbage collection. Does that happen? What is the foot traffic of this place? With foot traffic, I mean how many people enter the bakery compared to how many people enter the tattoo shop. Who's going to be entering that? Maybe the people in the tattoo shop, they smoke a little bit more than people going into the bakery, right? So you would see like cigarette butts on the floor. In the latest scene, you added like a little outdoor porch near the bakery, which is cool, right? Because that allows you to do like a little bit more storytelling, where you could have like leftover plates and like two coffees on the table, right? Because the people left, they drank their coffee, and now they're going to go back home. It is stuff like that that can add this layer of believability. That's what we want to do, right? So literally take any random screenshot or like any random street and just look at the floor, look at the dirt, look at where it gathers, like what kind of dirt it is. There's so much that you can do with that, right? Also, another thing in terms of like believability, I'll call this the infrastructure layer. With infrastructure, I'm literally talking about drainage, rain pipes, electric cables, electricity, right? Internet, all that kind of stuff. that can add like a really cool layer on top of it. Because, for example, you have these lights, right? So, okay, where does a cable go to then? So maybe you have like cables connecting it here. The cable goes down here to like a power box down here that maybe goes like into the building somehow, right? Or maybe this goes into the floor, and then maybe it connects to like another light that goes up there, right? And then same happens here as well, because I don't know if that's lit up or not, but we can start adding that stuff, and then you can have like a rain pipe coming down here, right? And then a little drainage channel over here that kind of goes in here, and then that kind of goes into like a little sewer grate over here. Right, but that is all stuff that we take for granted, but that we miss when we look at a piece like this, because we're so used to seeing like every house has like power line connections, every house has like drainage channels, every house has this. So we're so exposed to it on a daily basis that we forget to add these things. But this stuff is, you can kind of tell now that it's missing, right? Because we're pointing it out, but this stuff is cool to add into it. And then you have like a connection to the AC unit here as well, which you can integrate. This kind of stuff is cool, man. So yeah, that is definitely the stuff that I would think about. Here as well, you have some like cool decals going up from the wall, but there's none going from the wall up into the street, right? So you kind of have like some discoloration happening here as well. The same thing that is happening on the wall too. And that is gonna just blend everything together a little bit more, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that. Think about the location logic that we talked about, the infrastructure. Think about the invisible layer that we kind of forget about a lot. And then add little bits of storytelling on top of it to kind of give it like a unique edge. Yeah. Thank you, Con. Thank you for posting your work. This is looking interesting. Yeah, make sure that you got like these little details where, you know, like this is a proper edge that kind of has like another edge in it, so that this is like a proper window. These details are going to stand out a lot. And then just like little brickwork that kind of sticks out. What is Baxter saying? The graffiti is too clean. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of stuff that can be done by like making it like more grungier, especially with the transition from the floor to the wall. Fading graffiti there would be really cool, because that's where like dirt and water collects, right? So that's where it's gonna fade the most. But like you're saying, rain, leaves, stains, all that kind of stuff is really missing here. I tried to generalize it, right? So I really talked about like the location logic, where it said like all those like things that we don't think about. And that's definitely a part of it. So thanks for bringing it up, Maurice. Thank you, Con. Best of luck. We're gonna move on to the next one, which is Vasia. Where is Vasia? Oh, do I have him linked as something different? I remember adding your work. Eh? Did I close you on accident? Let's have a quick look. Oh, I guess I did not. Okay. Let's do a quick one here. I did download the images. Let's see. There we go. Right. So continuation of this project. I'd like to ask for feedback and advice on the texture of the chair mesh and the robot hands. I try to put more effort into it, but I'm afraid that I missed something. Okay, so let's talk about that first. Cool. Let's have a look. So I kind of like what's happening here. It does feel like a little bit heavy-handed. I would honestly try to tone it down just a little bit. And then also this thing like really stands out as being like at an awkward position because we're literally patching up something that is already covered by something else. So I could potentially see, like, let's say you have like a patch here or something like that, right? That would make sense. But this patch is literally underneath like another surface, which doesn't really make that much sense. Also, when it comes to metal, right, this kind of damage just doesn't fit the material that is supposed to be beyond, right? So the damage doesn't really fit the surface or the material. I was wondering just from last time, is Whip Wednesday still available for the team challenges this time around? Yeah, I think that could be cool. I'll need to make a post about that actually. Because yeah, I would definitely love to have that in there. Not sure how far that's gonna push the whole timeline here, but like that's something for me to worry about. So yeah, same thing here as well. The damage here just feels like it's pretty generic, right? That just means that I kind of want to see like... This is hinting that you don't really have good references for the damage that you want to create. That is what that's hinting to me. So you're just like coming up with something that could be cool, but I want you to do like a deep dive into this and be like, okay, if metal gets damaged in whatever possible way it's here, right? Like, it's not just gonna crack, right? Like, metal will dent, but it will barely crack. Apart from under, extreme circumstances. And I think this could apply to the whole thing, right? Like, more references. I was gonna bring that up first, but then I got distracted. But you're saying, I'm afraid that I missed something, right? That feeling there, that feeling that you have, that you missed something, means that you need more references. That is your mind hinting at like, hey, we're missing something here, right? And a way to turn that into something more productive is then be like, okay, well, you basically have a couple of options, right? So the first option is you're going to ask me or someone else to give you some feedback on it. But another option is also just, hey, I'm going to go and kind of see what I'm missing, right? And try to figure it out for myself. And that just honestly comes down to more reference. Like, really go look for damaged metal or metal damage, or if you want to get like really specific, try to think about the material that it's built out of, right? So let's say, for example, aluminum, right? If this is like aluminum plating, look for like aluminum damage. So that case, you can get like really specific with the damage that you're trying to convey. And then you also want feedback on the textures of the other meshes, like the cabinets and the bucket. Do they look okay in the scene, or do I make changes? So we got the bucket here. Which one was it? The metal cabinets. Yeah, I do like the metal cabinets though. I mean, the bucket and the metal cabinets, they kind of look really nice. They kind of fit into the scene like really well. It kind of has this interesting maybe that's a style that you want to go for, but it kind of has this like interesting realism with like a slight bit of stylization applied to it as well. So yeah, I think the consistency between all of it is reading really well at this point. Again, this might be a nitpick. Just adding like little strips of like band-aid to it kind of feels like, hey, I'm unsure about keeping this metal cabinet as is, so I'm just gonna add something, but I don't know what. Ugh. What I would rather you do is then have a look at, okay, find an excuse to do something like this, right? And what an excuse could be is, let's say on the outside of the cabinet, you literally have like a section that says like the name of the cabinet and like what's stored in the cabinet or something like that, right? So if you find that you want to add something more to a texture, and this applies to like everyone listening really, right? If you find yourself like, hey, I kind of want to add something here, be creative and try to find a creative solution around that problem, right? That's basically what we have to do like all the time. It is literally just being like, hey, I think I want to add something here. How can I do that without breaking the consistency or the logic of the world that I'm trying to set up? So yeah, in that case, maybe a label that has like all the items that are stored in there. Right? That could be cool. But yeah. Cool work, Vasia. I love what you're doing with the textures. Keep it a little bit less generic, right? It kind of feels like, oh, it's only gonna happen on the edges. Try to like scatter it around a bit. Again, think about like how people are gonna interact with the surface, right? I'm gonna be sitting on it a lot, so this is gonna have like the most amount of damage. People are gonna be scooting their feet along the bottom of it, so that's gonna have high damage as well. Or high friction. Oh, I'll switch to music up again. Well, so yeah, these are like high friction areas. And that can be helpful to then have that texture that you already have that applied in those areas as well. Right? Cool. A bit of a goofy, cartoony crack. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Magma. Marissa's saying, if you're looking for good references, Google heavy industrial robotics. Yeah, exactly. Like, that could be a good one. And if you, I mean, just a couple of keywords, right? Like, discarded industrial robotics or something like that. Like, having something that is already repurposed or has been discarded by like a big tech company is gonna have like a bunch of scratches and dents and all that kind of stuff on it. Or repurposed industrial robotics, right? Like, you can have so much fun by just like replacing what are the keywords and then being like, okay, what does this do? Cool. Thank you so much, Vasia, for publishing your work. Always appreciated. Next one up for today is No One Austin. Austin is working on something that takes me back. It is a sci-fi freaking corridor. This is probably, I mean, at a certain point, it was everyone's first project. But this was like my first, I'm gonna be an independent environment artist and I'm gonna make my own thing. It was a sci-fi corridor. The things that I learned from that were, hey, sci-fi stuff required a lot of design and I fucking suck at design. And what design in this case basically comes down to is, if we kind of put like an environment artist spin on it, right? It's what is the function of this corridor, right? What is it connecting? Because we can make like a cool sci-fi corridor, But if it's just a corridor and it has no purpose, then it's just an empty space, right? And if you think, if we zoom out a little bit, right, and you think about a spaceship, and you think about all the interesting spaces that you have in a spaceship, I would guarantee you that no one is gonna say that the corridors between spaces are gonna be the most interesting thing. So, it is very difficult to kind of infuse something into it, especially after the fact, right? That doesn't take away that this isn't like a good exercise to get into, right? And kind of see what you can do as your first kind of grips with modularity and all that kind of stuff, right? Because I had to start there too, so I get it. But I would always think from like a storytelling perspective upwards, right? So we'll just ask a couple of questions here. So what is a spaceship, right? Like, what spaceship are we actually flying in, right? It could be a mining ship, it could be a combat vessel, it could be anything, right? So that's a good first question to ask, because from that we can get context, right? Context for the space that we are building. Number 2, what does it connect? Right? Again, additional context here. And then if you have what does it connect, right? So let's say this is a combat vessel. They're usually like the easiest to go to. And this is literally connecting the bridge with the hangar bay, right? Where they have like all the fighters or something like that. Cool. Now we can actually add some stuff in there that is going to be signifying what the space is, right? Because if you look at industrial spaces, if you look at hospitals, if you look at any space, it is going to have some sort of visual language that will signify and make areas distinct from each other, right? You can do that with big numbers. You can do that with different colors. You can do that with styles. You can do that with a lot of stuff, right? But what I'm thinking about is cool. So we wanna kind of see what this is, right? So if we already start adding, okay, this is number 1. This is like the docking bay, right? Cool. So now we have like a visual direction that we're trying to pull towards, and this is going to give identity to the space. So let's go with our idea. This is a docking space, right? Cool. Now we know that that is a space that we're going to be walking towards. What is typical for a docking bay, right? There's probably going to be a lot of stuff in transit towards the docking bay, right? So we probably have like a bunch of goods that are just like waited to be like transported into the docking bay. And that is something that we can then work with, right? Because right now what we're doing is we're giving this whole space character. Right? We're giving it an identity. That's probably a better way to say it. But that is definitely something to think about. We did keep it like high level. And that was by design. That was definitely by design. Because I really want you to think about these things, right? Because that's gonna clarify what the space is gonna be, and then you can start adding things in that space that are gonna be more used to that space as well. I'll give you another example here, and this is the last one. Because the last the last update that you did, I'll share it with the people here as well. It was a good little update, right? So we're getting, from like a visual perspective, we're getting like more interesting shapes that are coming into the space, right? So which is really good. Oh fuck, I drew over the image. Dang it. So we're getting the lighting like a little bit more solidified. We're getting like some additional shapes in there. But what I wanted to point out is that if you have a ship with like a lot of like tubes and wires and all that kind of stuff running in there, that is also saying something about the ship, right? That is saying that this is run by like a crew that probably doesn't have like the greatest mechanics, and they're just like just hot wiring everything whenever they need to, right? So that is something that is also revealing something about this ship as well. That's something to take into account too. Let's talk about some actual tips that I can give you at this point, right? Some applicable tips. I'm trying to put myself into the headspace of a person who is doing this, right? I'm basically trying to go back to whenever I was doing my my sci-fi corridor. The first tip that I'll give is the lights that you add need to be physical somehow, right? They need like light fixtures or whatever. So build that into the scene as quick as you can, and that's already gonna look way better. I'm seeing some interesting stuff happening with your textures. Oh, in here it looks fine though. Okay. So your there's something happening with your mesh normals here. You can see how the light interacts with the whole surface. And if we can compare that to the actual texture that you made here, right? So this is the texture that you're using on the walls. You can look at this. This looks really sharp. And then this looks really blobby, right? And that just means that the normals that you have assigned to your mesh, they're probably just all smoothed out. So it's trying to make the whole thing just as smooth as possible. So that means that you have to, in those cases where you have like a sharp edge, you want to set that as a sharp edge as well so that you get like sharp highlights there too. So that would be one thing to think about, and that's gonna have a drastic impact on your scene. Even though this is an earlier screenshot and it looks... In this one it looks good. So I'm not sure what happened here, to be honest. Maybe the texture is not applied? I'm not sure. Something to watch out for though. So yeah, make sure that the mesh normals are... like that the assets basically look good, right? And that the light is physical. Let's see. I'm looking for specific feedback on adding in a few assets to fill in the space and using a trim or modular kit pieces. But general feedback is welcome too. So we kind of already talked about the assets, right? I'm basically giving you the blueprint, right? Like the stuff that we said here, those questions, what spaceship it is, what does it connect to, like what does this corridor connect to, like all that kind of stuff is basically the blueprint on what assets to make, right? If you use that as a fundamental thing, you're gonna figure out which assets to make there. Welcome, Austin. Welcome to the chat. So the wall is now textured with a trim sheet. Should I texture it independently? No, you can do it with a trim sheet, but the mesh normals are the biggest issue. Right? So I'm not sure how you're going about it. Because if you look at something like Star Citizen, for example, right? The way that they do it is they have like these. Okay, we're going to simplify this a little bit. If you look at Star Citizen, what they do is they have one material per different kind of metal, right? I'm oversimplifying here, but bear with me. So the base of it is actually just one tileable material, right? And then all the additional stuff that they do on top of it, so like all these details and all these panel lines and all these panel lines and these vents and all that kind of stuff is going to be on a secondary texture, which is going to be a decal atlas, which is basically just a collection of shapes that can be mapped onto an additional surface as like a floating bit of geometry on top of it. So let's say those shapes, that shape is in there. You have like a straight piece. You have like your vents. You have like your additional piece up here. Like all that kind of stuff is just, it is layered on top of it with separate geometry. That's the way that they build it. So yeah, this is not an easy project. This is not an easy project. It gets really technical really quickly. For your case, you could... Yeah, you could do it with a trim sheet for sure, without getting into like all the technical stuff here, and kind of simplify a lot of it. But then you just have to make sure that you have like some cool shapes in your trim sheet, right? And be pretty smart with like how you unwrap things as well. But yeah, honestly, this workflow could be like a multi-hour talk just by itself. You know, so I would recommend you to read up on it, Austin. But yeah, think about your mesh normals. Think about like having physical lights in your scene, and think about the storytelling and the purpose of the ship as well, right? Because that's going to give you like a lot of inspiration for the types of assets that you need to make as well. So yeah, thanks for all the advice. No worries, Austin. Best of luck as well. Yeah, I mean, I was here ages ago, so this is making me like nostalgic as well. And a lot of people begin with like with a sci-fi corridor. If there's one thing that I could say, take whatever wins that you can from this project, right? And then go on to the next project. Like finish it until when you want to kind of keep working on it. And if you don't, then that's fine too, because you still learned a bunch of stuff on the way. That is my experience with my sci-fi hallway, right? There's a reason why it's no longer on my portfolio, and it hasn't been for like the longest time. So yeah. But yeah, have fun with it, Austin, and thanks for posting your work. Oh man, we need to be way quicker here. Val is next. Let's see if we can speedrun some stuff here a little bit. Let's see. So a couple of questions from Val here. So far I've been making every model and texture from scratch except for the foliage and the water shader. However, I'm using both extensively. Am I relying too much on external assets? Do they take up too much attention from the architecture? No. No, I don't think you are. It is nice to kind of have it as like a set dressing thing, right? I think the case for you would be to make it consistent, right? Because you are going for a stylized piece, like a stylized piece of work. So you need to make sure that the style is consistent between your assets and external stuff. Right? So that is probably going to be the trickery here, because I see that I think you're using some Megascan trees in the back, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure though. But yeah, so keep that in mind. Next question is the UVs for some assets, mostly everything brick related, were laid on top of each other to save texture space. One example is that both fountains share a single 2K texture while maintaining textile density consistent. But at the cost of UVs overlapping, would that make them unusable for light baking? Is it better for a portfolio piece to show off texture space saving unwrapping, or is it better to show proper UV packing for light baking? I've heard of dual UV channels. Okay, so it's a good question. There's basically, if you talk about light baking uses a separate UV set altogether, so you don't have to be worried about it. Basically what you do is you have your first UV for your textures, right? Like how you assign your textures like you've done already. And then you basically have a second UV set, which is, well, before Lumen, it would auto-generate one for you and automatically like unwrap it to be like more optimal for like light baking. So it would basically do it all for you in the background. If you're using Unreal Engine 5 though, you are not using light baking. So you do not have to be worried about it unless you went back and disabled all lighting features with Lumen and all that kind of stuff. Which I don't even know. Well, you can definitely go back to it, but yeah. So yeah, that's something that you don't have to be worried about. Let me make some notes here, actually. So, number 2 is light baking in general is, I'm generalizing here because you can still do it in Unreal Engine 5, but is Unreal Engine 4. So no need to be worried about that at all. Then your other question that's kind of hidden in there, is it better to show off texture space saving unwrapping? Always. Like, texture space is one of the biggest things when it comes to optimization. Is one of the biggest things that we should do, right? However, you can also, I'm not sure. I am not sure. Yeah, I know that you can still do it, but like it's heavily encouraged to use Lumen, right? The question here though, like I'm sensing that there might be like a little bit of a misunderstanding with how to use textures, because you can go out of your 0 to 1 space, right? I just want to bring that up. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but you don't have to stick within the 0 to 1 space. You can basically use a tileable and just have it go out of the 0 to 1 space. So I wanted to bring that up. So the textures are not limited to 0 to 1 UV space. Just make an extra note of that. Little star next to it. What are you guys saying? Yes, I do that a lot. Oh, are you talking about like GPU light mask baking? So you think that baking lights is kind of obsolete now? So it is not obsolete, but I, as an environment artist, I wouldn't be bothered with it. Especially if you're trying to get into like AAA development, right? Which is, that's my whole spectrum basically. You just leave that to the lighting artists, right? Because even if you think about like big open world games, oh, use UV space, okay. If you think about big open world space, there will always be a balance between like, okay, dynamic day and night cycles, right? And then also having like a bunch of baked lights as well and trying to use the best properties of both of them. However, I never cared about light baking. I've always done dynamic lights, always in any project, even in Unreal Engine 4 when like global illumination sucked and all that kind of stuff. Because I just could never be bothered with just like actually going through light baking because it felt such a cumbersome part of the process that I never used it myself. So I don't think it's obsolete in the pipeline. I think it's obsolete for your work as an environment artist, unless you want to specialize in lighting. Number 3, so the third question from Val is, what would be the most interesting, useful aspect to break down for this piece? What should I put more emphasis on? That is honestly up to you, because it's a combination of the most interesting, but also the piece that is just well constructed, right? Like, what has the best UVs, the best topology? Like, what is the most interesting? Tim is the cause of laggy games. No, I can just blame someone else. It's even better. But yeah, like, it's a combination of what's most interesting and what's most well constructed, right? So that's the thing that you have to decide, really. From what I can tell, some interesting material shader work could potentially be interesting to showcase, because you don't necessarily have like a unique prop in the scene, right? And I don't think it's necessarily worth it to break down the fountain, because that just looks like it's textured with a tileable texture. So that's probably going to be not too interesting to break down. So yeah, I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, think about the combination of what is the thing that I spent the most time on and what could be interesting, and then we go forward, right? It is okay, cool. And then number 4 is also any feedback on other things that I might be missing would be super important. This is my first serious attempt at a PBR environment and could use all the advice that I can get. I think currently what I would focus on the most is lighting. That can have the biggest impact on your scene right now. And I would specifically focus on getting a little bit of contrast in there. The entire scene is heavily leaning on the orange spectrum, because you have orange textures, you have an orange sky, like an orange light, like everything is kind of just like, it's very orange. Try to have a little bit of a contrast. So for example, if the majority of your textures in the scene are more on the warm spectrum, then I would probably go for a cooler light or like a midday light with like some bluish shadows, right? Because you're trying to always infuse the scene with a little bit of contrast to make it like easier to read. Because otherwise we're gonna, especially when it's on the warm spectrum, we're kind of always deviating into like, oh, this is my vision of hell. That's kind of always what it feels like, right? Because everything is orange, like the scene is orange, the light is orange, and everything's just like, we're fucking burning up. So yeah, try to infuse a little bit of contrast in there. But yeah. Hello, Mick Val. Welcome, welcome. Those are my 2 cents. Thank you so much for posting your work, Val. Best of luck. And sorry about the delay as well in the feedback. I'm sorry that you had to, that I missed last session as well. But yeah, cool stuff. Really, really cool project though. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Next one in the list. Where are we? Saeem. Saeem is on the screen already. Nice. Cool. So, latest update on the scene. I would love to get some feedback on the overall look of the scene and tips on what I can improve on. Do the current textures look okay? Should I add more dirt and dust on the assets? You would definitely need to add more variation. So you've got a couple of options here. right? So we're gonna talk about problems, and then we're gonna talk about how to potentially get rid of those problems, right? So we're gonna do some creative problem solving here. Problem number 1. Texture repetition. Right? So how can we avoid texture repetition is more textures, blending existing textures, so vertex painting, anything like that. Blending, so that would be vert paint, etc. That could be a good option here. So we got more textures, we got different blendings. I think that's good. We got like a couple of options here, right? Because even in blending, you can do vertex painting. You could have like different materials, different shaders, all that kind of stuff, right? So that is giving you a lot of options here in vertex painting. Number 2, sharp edges. The columns that are coming down, they're just like really sharp edges, and it kind of feels like it makes the scene feel really 3D, right? Very artificial, especially on all the surfaces. So we need to find a way around that, right? So a couple of things here is more geometry, right? Adding like a tiny bevel on everything. Probably not the most efficient and performative way to go about it, especially for game purposes. So the next thing would be normal maps, right? Or just any sort of like normal information on those edges. And you can do that with, yeah, you can do that in a lot of ways, but the more common things is high to low poly baking, right? Not recommended for a scene like this. So maybe we need to look at some more reusable ways of doing this. So with a trim sheet, for example. This is definitely like the easy option, right? But also the most expensive in terms of like the amount of geometry that you're adding to the scene, right? But this is super easy to do. The more common way that we do it within games is by using a normal map, right? And then trying to break up the edges as well. And then you could even add like little cracks and little variation on those surfaces as well. So 1, texture repetition, 2, sharp edges in the whole scene. And those are like the 2 biggest things that I would say right now to really focus on. Yeah. I mean, you bring up like dirt and all that kind of stuff. That could kind of go in like blending, right? So dirt, etc. Petition to keep the mannequins even for the final render. Do it. Do it. It could be cool if you give them like if you give them like a robe, like a really menacing robe. But in the end, they're still just like the mannequins, right? And if you pay attention, you can see it. That would be cool. They're just like this really dark, like robe that just covers their entire body. Ooh. Random question. Random questions are always welcome, Antoine, I think. So, do you see a path for a career change for a person in their 40s in the environment design of game art? Yeah, so the thing that I always bring up here is the first person that basically started like our Discord server and whatever was also a person, I think, in 30s at that point, making the switch from something else completely to game art. And I've seen a couple of people do it like I've seen a couple of people do it in like the last couple of years. What it really comes down to is if you really want to do it, then I would honestly just go for it. So I think so. Right now it is difficult in games altogether, right? I'm sure you've seen the news. It's been going on for a couple of years now. So it's definitely gonna be difficult, but if you are in the starting phase of making your switch, that means that you're going to be in a really good position by the time that that switch does happen, right? So that could be really good. So yeah, it for me it literally comes down to, do you really want to do it? If yes, then go for it. Yeah, you're welcome. I will say it's not going to be easy, right? I mean, it is not an easy industry to get into. But yeah, it is also fun. Like being able, I mean, even if I complain about like all the game art pipelines and all the stuff that you have to do to get a game off the ground, which is something that's really ridiculous. It is really cool to have the power in your hands to make like a 3D world, you know, and then people play it. There's something about that. Really satisfying. Cool. Let's see. So Zaim, thank you for publishing your work. Thank you for your updates. Always cool to see. Let's move on to the next person. So next person is Koko Ava. Koko Ava. There we go. Oasis is currently an in-production thing. There's a whole bunch of cool updates here. I'd love to hear some thoughts on this work, especially any opportunities for improvements. Seeing the early results makes me want to develop it further and include it in my portfolio. Cool. Okay. Let me think. Where do we start? So you have this core reference down here, right? Which is really interesting. Also kind of looks like AI generated as well at the same point. Don't necessarily care about that as long as you get something to work towards. I would always go for like real life references though, because there's no substitute for them like at all. So that would definitely be my recommendation. But yeah, I think from like a fundamental level, there's a lot that we can finesse here, right? So the first thing that I'll say is the mood, right? So the mood and the lighting is not where you assumed it was going to go, right? So, or like it's not close to the end result that you were aiming for, right? This is really cool because it has a lot of contrast. It has like a good focal point, all that kind of stuff, which is sort of missing in your screenshots, right? A good way to think about this is where do you want people to focus? And if everything is kind of demanding your attention in a scene like this, it's really hard for me to decide where you want me to focus, right? So, yeah. So I would really think about that. So for example, a really easy thing, let's do a quick overpaint here to give you like an idea of what I mean. We are gonna What are we doing here? Not the highlights, I want the midtones, please. I am gonna need all the opacity. There we go. There we go. Right, we're going in heavy-handedly, right? This is a little bit over the top, but hopefully it does illustrate my point. Even with this, you give the person, or you give the viewer of this piece just like a focal point, right? Because now we're directing the eye towards the brightest point in the scene. Cool. And now what we can do with that is we can then build some storytelling around it and make it more impactful for people to look at, right? Because what we basically do as visual artists is we decide where people are gonna look, right? And then we usually do that in a way where we can encourage them to look at something that is a part of the game design, that is a part of the storytelling, or anything like that, right? So that we can direct them to the thing that we want them to see. Let me switch back to what we had before, right? Whereas with this, that is just not happening because everything is vying for your attention. So one of the fundamental things that we need to do, and that's why they're literally called like art fundamentals, is as artists, we have to look at how we can use all the different levers that we can pull, which is talking about like different kind of shapes, different kinds of just like density of details, the color contrast, the lighting, like all those art fundamentals, they kind of come together to form like one cohesive picture that we can then look into and be like, okay, I see what it's trying to do, right? Same thing here, right? Like if you really start breaking it down, you have two dominant colors. So you have red and green. They are on the opposite side of the spectrum, so they create like a nice color contrast by themselves, which is interesting just from like the base standpoint, right? This reference is actually pretty simple when it comes to the actual color composition, which also is what makes it beautiful and so easy to follow from like a visual perspective, right? And then obviously you kind of have the pathway leading you down it, which are called like leading lines. And they are literally telling you to look here, right? And then we have this silhouette that kind of stands out from the lighter background because again, contrast, right? Contrast can work in terms of colors, but it can also work in terms of values. So if you put something that is light in a dark alleyway, that is going to pull your eye in. But we can also do the opposite as well. So we can have something dark and then something light behind it, and then we make the thing stand out, right? There's a lot of stuff to go in here, but I would really, at this point, play around with your lighting and keep it really simple and try to remove all these lights. That's what I would start. Remove all these lights, imagine that they're not there, and try to get somewhat close to the mood that you have here with your single directional light that you have in your scene. That's the way that I would approach it. And then from that point, you can then be like, okay, I feel like I have like a good grasp on the scene with a singular light now. Now I can go in and add other lights, but like do it in stages. That's going to make it way more manageable. And then decide where you want people to look, right? So for example, if we turn off these guys in this shot and then just have like these ones here, we're kind of steering the person down here as well. And then this becomes more of like a background element, which could be cool. But yeah. That is honestly the biggest thing that I would say is yeah, it's literally art fundamentals. right? Because it's so broad, I can't really nail it down to one thing here necessarily. So I'm just going to call it art fundamentals, and underneath that there's light, contrast, silhouette, blah, 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 blah. There's like a bunch of stuff underneath there. But yeah, I would honestly, if we're making it really applicable, try to go for something like this that you have in your reference. Just try and recreate that from a lighting perspective. That could already be like really interesting. Cool. Thank you, Koko Ava. It's really cool to see the updates though. Really cool to see how you're building your stuff. You're really putting in a lot of work. Hello, Ains. Yeah. That's awesome. But yeah, like keep it up, because I can tell that there's passion in it, right? Like you really love working on this and you're having a lot of fun too. It's just we need to find a way to make it more focused and less just like there's a chaotic image in front of us, right? Cool. Thank you for posting it. A lot of people today? Yes, I think we had 21 people in total. So trying to go a little bit quicker today. We'll see how far we get. And next up is Hardy. Hardy Gresham. Honestly, I might skip this one because we actually had a bunch of people given a bunch of really good feedback on this already. Oh, not a bunch of people, like a couple of people. Let's see. Okay, let me see if I can add some stuff here. Where are we? Hardy. So this has changed a little bit already. What were the questions here? So where does your eye currently go? I think definitely on the corner, right? So I think you did a good job of having the brightest point in like most of the images just be on the corner, right? One of the tricks that you can do here, let me see, is just turning it into black and white, right? And then it becomes really easy to see, especially if you zoom out, like where the brightest point of your scene is. You can kind of see that there's like the stroke of sunlight that goes across like the curve of the building, which works really well. So I think honestly you already nailed that. But you would love to get some critique on the shape, the colors, the lighting. Yeah. So the main thing that I wanted to bring up here is I think it could be really nice to just have a pop of color, right? Like a little pop of color in maybe some of the plant pots, right? Like something very subtle, maybe something like really green or really red or something like that, where you could have, I don't know, someone hanging something on there, or maybe just doing it in the logo of this guy. But I'm just really looking for a potential pop of color. I'm not sure how big or how small I want to make this necessarily, right? Like, because a lot of the time, what I'm doing when I'm creating my scenes is I'll do iterations of them, right? Where it's not definitive. That's what I love about the art of creation, is that you kind of do it in iterations where you're like, hey, I'll try something like very vibrant on the logo on top of it. Nah, maybe that's too much. Okay, I'm just gonna dim that down. So we need to find another way of doing this. Another way of kind of adding a pop of color without it being overwhelming. So I would honestly just try like a couple of iterations for yourself. Like Mikval was saying, maybe laundry hanging out could be interesting. Just the plants, maybe a bit of foliage. Yeah, you could do a bunch of cool stuff with this. But I think what I always lean on is basically the stuff that you said yourself, right? So you mentioned, I love the pink and the turquoise look of the building, but I think I need to introduce some red into the sign to give it more contrast. What do you think? I think you should follow your gut. And that's what I think. So try it. I would give it a try. And honestly, like that's probably the best advice that I can give, is that if you have that like internal drive where you're like, I kind of want to do this, just give it a try, you know? Give it a try. So yeah, probably not the thing that you were expecting, but I really like the look of it already. And dude, you just follow your gut, Harley. You got this. The next person on the list for today is, where are we? Oh my god, we're still so far down. Skitty Witty. Skitty Witty is already on the screen. More props from the screen. As an Unreal Engine beginner, I'm kind of struggling with lighting and realism here. I'm not sure how to work with the block out at the further area of the street. Feedback and help is very welcomed. So I actually added like a bunch of lighting tutorials in the general chat like yesterday, literally. So feel free to go and check those out. We have a bunch of really good ones on as workshops on our YouTube channel, right? But there's a bunch of interesting ones by other people too. So William Fauci did one. Karim Abu Shusha did a good one on how to create like photorealism. So I will add them in the chat, like these two.
In Unreal Engine, especially in the exposure.
Wow. Here with my channel, know that most of...
Let me just add these two in the chat. Which one was that? Yeah, so these are the two of the ones that I recommended personally, and then we have like a bunch of other ones on our workshop or like on our YouTube channel as well. So feel free to go check those out too. But they're pretty good. Would recommend them. Now you talk about what to do with a block out in the background, right? So this is where modularity comes into play. Right, modularity is a concept that we often use in games, where basically it comes down to we make our own Lego pieces, right? So we have a building, maybe with like, I don't know, like a 3-story building, a 2-story building, a 1-story building, different kind of setups, and then once we can kind of build it with different walls. So we have, let's say we have a kit of three windows, 3 walls, like a couple of roofs. Then we can kind of go crazy and kind of just build like a whole scene without the need of actually making like a new building every time, right? So if you want to do it properly, that would be the way to do it. So making a modular kit that allows you to make bigger parts of a city. Right, because let's see. These two buildings, they might literally be the same now, and you're just like tacking on like separate things, potentially. I'm not too sure though. But yeah, that would be a way to do it. Even if you don't want to do that, right? Basically, these houses, just reuse them in the background. And then if you want like less of less attention to go to the background, just make sure that you don't light it up as much, right? Because that's really what we're trying to do, right? Like we're trying to obscure the amount of reuse in the scene. So yeah. If your goal is to obscure the street in the back, then we just need to reuse the buildings. And then put like less light and less focus there, right? So that's what I would do already. That's basically what you're trying to do already at this point, right? Because you're trying to work with like the volumetric fog, but yeah, you're gonna have to pull like less light towards it as well. But I honestly don't think that like reusing the buildings is gonna be as big of a deal as you think it is. What I would always do is if you think that like, hey, I'm not sure how this is gonna look, that just means that you haven't tested it yet. As an artist, one of the best tricks that I've learned is this is basically about like unblocking yourself, right? So in the industry, if you're working with like different disciplines, you're working with different teams, and you're working with different people in those teams, what is commonly referred to as you need to unblock other people. So what that means is, let's say someone is dependent on your work. That is the work that you do first so that they can do their work that they're waiting on you to do, right? However, I wanna extend that concept a little bit more, and you need to unblock yourself. So let's say you're just outsourcing to yourself, right? This is gonna sound really weird, but let's just go with it. So let's say you are your own client and you're thinking about like, ooh, I'm really worried about something. That is your client voice that is saying, hey, this is a big blocker that I have. And that's probably where you need to invest more time into first. If you can then already figure out like, hey, I know how to do the backstreet now, that is a big issue that you're basically removing from your plate, right? Because like I was saying before, it's all about iteration, right? So we put something in, it doesn't look good yet, that's fine. We just iterate on it. So yeah, that's what I would do here as well. Keep pushing it, make sure that you focus on the bigger stuff first, and then keep working on it. So yeah, let's see. But yeah, if you're struggling with lighting and all that kind of stuff, I would definitely have a look at the resources that got linked in the general chat. Those are going to be really, really helpful. And thank you for posting your work, Skitty Witty. I will be posting like the link to this video and like all the overpaints in everyone's little chat as well after this. Wait, that can't be right. Oh, people are updating. God dang it. God dang it. Okay, this is gonna get really confusing then. Let's see. So Tringle's next. I'm currently in the planning phase, but this is my first time planning a modular environment, so I'm not sure if I'm currently doing this correctly. I wanted to ask for some help on what pieces here I could make modular. Here are the parts I've highlighted so far. I'm particularly confused on how to go about blocking the buildings in the back. Okay, so let's focus on the buildings in the back then. So we're basically coming down to the same thing again, right? So we're trying to build a modular kit. And we need to distill that to like a kit that kind of captures the mood that we want to go for without suffering the least amount of visual quality, right? Because some of this stuff is really hard to get in there and represent it in like a modular kit, right? Unless, I mean, we're gonna sync stuff into each other, but yeah. So you're kind of doing a good job already. These guys can be like separate. That's good. You're kind of doing a window here, but you're already seeing the issue because you have 2 windows and this one has 3 windows. So what are we going to do in that case? You got a couple of options here. You can do number 1 with 2 windows, number 3 with 3 windows, number 2 with 3 windows. It's going to get really confusing. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to have like a wall panel behind it, right? So the wall panel will literally be, if we're looking from the side, this will be the wall panel, and then you have like the window sitting on top of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be like properly implemented into each other. We can just fake it, right? You're never going to notice that. That does mean, again, and this is where the combination of, hey, we want to make a modular kit, but then also get the most flexibility out of it. That does mean in this case that we're going to have a little lip that is going to be sticking out of the wall, just because we kind of need that for those windows, right? And then what you could do is we have a combination of these two. So this is literally module 2, module 1, potentially, I don't know, potentially like a variation or something like that if you wanted to go that far, but we don't really need to. And then for the walls, you would just make like a normal kit, right? So you would have like, let's say a 1 meter piece, a 2 meter piece, and then a 4 meter piece. I mean, I'm calling it normal because I've done it a couple times now. But let's say something like this, right? So 1, 2, and 4 allows us to make 3, allows us to make 1, allows us to make 5, allows us to make 6. It allows us to make like any sort of configuration that we want, right? And that's going to be our walls done. The walls are done. Cool. Same thing for the roofs, right? Roofs, you make like 1 meter section, make a 2 meter, and then potentially like a 4 meter. Right? And now for the roof, you could, and this is where it gets really complex with a building like this. This is you're gonna have to play around with this, right? Because I'm not gonna have the time to make the decisions for you. But you're gonna have to experiment here, because we could literally make the modules for these guys and then just duplicate them downwards and then just make this roof as well, while making it from like, I don't know, 2 4 meter modules and one 1 meter module. Jesus Christ. And this is where you have to play around, because then I'm looking at this roof and I'm like, can I use that here as well? Potentially. And then can I use that here as well? Potentially. But that's where you would have to see what is for you the ideal situation between visual quality and modularity. That is the big thing here, right? And then if we have the roofs kind of sorted out, then we can potentially just make like a unique thing for this guy here. It's only used once. I'm not seeing it anywhere else. So I'm just going to make a unique guy for this one. Same for this one. It's pretty unique. It adds to the silhouette of the building. Make it a unique one, right? Because as you're building up these modules, what is going to happen is you're going to build a kit of materials that allows you to just make like any module that is a little bit more unique, like way easier. Same thing for this guy here as well. That could be like, it could honestly be just like a tower by itself, you know, at that point. Because modularity, it works when it doesn't read like a modular thing. So you're always trying to balance modularity with uniqueness. Right? Cool. But yeah, the best way that you can do this is make it really quick, right? I'm talking about gray boxes, and play around with it. And once you got your configuration, then start detailing. So literally step number 1 is gray box. Step number 2 is play around with it. And then step number 3 is like detailing, to simplify it, detail and iterate. And that's it. Yeah. Hope that was helpful, Tringle. Looking forward to seeing you make the kit. It's going to be exciting. Got a question in the chat. So David Griffith is asking, people always talk about the Unreal look. What do you think contributes to this, and how do you usually get rid of it in Lumen renders? I've always worked in proprietary engines. So, I mean, I've done personal work in Unreal, right? And there is a way that it does like its anti-aliasing, right? Which is probably going to be like the main contributor, especially now with Lumen coming in. I feel that a lot of games that I'm playing in Unreal are very, very similar when it comes to their look, just because of Lumen and like the artifacts and like how rigid it is, right? Some of the things that I've used in my latest project that I haven't posted yet, and maybe never will, who knows, is just re-enabling things like SSAO, like screen space ambient occlusion. That helps a lot with just like the readability and the depth of it. That was really useful. Super sampling, like basically turning your screen percentage to 200% when you're making renders, that also always helps because it gets like a crisper image. But yeah, those are like the two things that I tend to use like always, but it doesn't get rid of the look necessarily, right? It's probably a good question to ask someone with like more technical experience that then, I don't know, go into like more technical details. It's a good question though. I just don't have the answer to it, unfortunately. Let's see. Keita. Let's see. Here you are, Keita. Hello, Connor. Good to see you. How you doing, buddy? So, a couple of questions from Keita today. I would like to get some feedback on the following things and everything else that comes to your mind. Is the scene currently too noisy? No. Should I adjust the composition? Wait, are we talking about... Yeah, we're talking about this scene, right? Hello, Healthy Game Dev. Welcome, welcome. No, it's not too noisy. I actually like how like the grass has like a subtle shadow, but it's not distracting. The lighting is very harsh though. The lighting is very harsh when it comes to like you got some like very strong. First of all, like the scene is almost entirely just like orangey yellowish, right? And then you got some like really strong shadows as well. So you got like very strong lighting, but the background of your scene suggests that it's just like a pristine midday summery day, right? So there's a conflict between the lighting that you have and the background currently. But in terms of the noise, I don't think so. Like, it feels very pleasant, you know? Let's see. Should I adjust the composition? I think you can squeeze more out of the composition for sure by potentially thinking about like foreground, midground, and background a little bit more. So potentially having, I don't know, like a little tree. Let's see. What would I do? Maybe not around the building, but definitely... Yeah, definitely some volumes just to the left, right? So that you're kind of blocking stuff off here. Now we're kind of creating this sort of like very, very nice curve that kind of welcomes you in. And we could potentially put stuff in the background here. Sort of like this tree, right? I think that tree kind of softens up the whole shape here, which is quite nice. And then maybe some, like a bush in the foreground. We can't really do all that much, right? So maybe like on the foreground here, we can just have like a tree coming into the foreground. Maybe do the same thing here or something like that. I know it's getting very confusing, right? So this is foreground. This is also in the foreground. And the rest of it can be in the background. So what I'm trying to do is kind of, oh, the shadow's in the way. What I'm trying to do is kind of, I'm trying to soften up like some of the harsh, what is the best way of saying this? Like the harsh contrast between the background and just like the shape of the house, right? Because the house itself is a really strong shape. So what I'm trying to do with the composition, I'm trying to massage it in a bit, and I'm trying to make it feel like it's a part of a bigger world that it's in. Do you think that the pad in front of it is okay? Yeah, I think so. Like if we're talking about like compositionally or texturally. Because like compositionally, you could potentially do something that's a little bit more windy and curvy. Right, so potentially something like this. And then maybe just make it look more trying to think in terms of like color contrast, right? So maybe just like an orangey kind of dirt. The reason why I was so hesitant about saying orange dirt is because the scene itself now feels very orangey, right? So that was why I was a little bit doubtful about it. Because the house is big and the path is very natural. But that could still work, I think. That could still work. I mean, if you wanted to add some additional context there, you could have like some cart tracks or something like that, right? And then maybe have like, I don't know, like someone's cart in the foreground. You know, and then they're pulling the cart like into work. Potentially. I don't think it's necessarily that big of a deal, honestly. Yeah, cool. So feedback on the materials. I want to use a hand painted kind of look with a subtle normal map, right? Right now I have been using only tileable materials, which can look a little bit odd, especially on wooden objects. How detailed should I get here? So the detail is kind of up to you. Detail is kind of up to you, honestly, because it kind of depends on the style, right? What I would definitely say is if you have the flexibility of your assets, well, let me clarify that. If you have the flexibility in your assets that they're not like uniquely baked or something like that, then I would make way more use of the actual curves of the pieces, right? So what that means is literally have like curves like this, where everything kind of feels a little bit more unique. And you kind of have, because some of the curves here are starting to look like quite nice. Maybe you can exaggerate them on the roof as well. But some of the silhouettes are starting to become like really nice, but you can really push it like to the next level if you wanted to. And then same thing on the chimney, right? Like make it like a chunky chimney at the bottom. There's obviously, because this is a modular kit, you kind of have to again find the balance between like, okay, what do I keep modular? What is like a detail piece that I can slap onto it that kind of gives it like a nice curve? Like you kind of have to you're gonna have to play around with that a little bit. But yeah, that's where the beauty of stylized scenes comes in for me, right? Is that you have that flexibility to go a little bit more like bulky with your shapes, where you can really exaggerate some of the silhouettes and like really start playing around with them. It's going to be so cool to look at. But yeah. It's a cool scene though. I really like the scene so far. But yeah, really push those silhouettes. Push the lighting to the next level and the composition, and you got something like beautiful on your hands, right? It's gonna be cool to see it coming together. Yeah. Lovely work though. I like it so far. And is there something missing that could make the scene nicer? I think in the beginning we talked about a lot, right? Like the composition improvements, emphasizing the silhouettes and like really playing around with the shapes of things. I think honestly those are the biggest things that I want to bring up because yeah, that's gonna have like a huge impact. But yeah, and then maybe, you know, some cute VFX stuff that comes out of these chimneys. Could be cool. Could be cool. And then some like little movement that you see, like you see this like swinging from left to right. That could be cool. But yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing your work. Healthy game dev. I love it. That feedback is gold. Really helpful. Yeah. Awesome scene. Looking forward to seeing the developments of this. So keep us up to date. Switching on to the next one, we got Will. Can I get some help with the overall composition of the scene? So Will is back with a vengeance. Connor is saying Liverpool won the Derby. Awesome. I've got no clue what the Derby is, but I'm glad you won. Glad you won. Cool. Let's have a look at the composition. Yeah, I cut this off a little bit. Let me see if we can get this all in view. Yeah, I mean, the composition of the left one is really good. The way that you got like the dark foreground as well. That's going to be really helpful. Comparing the two, the left one is definitely like way stronger in terms of like composition, right? Compared to the right one. There's something nice about like the hierarchy in terms of like lights and shadows in the left one that the right one currently doesn't have. So if we have, I don't know, some sort of shape in the foreground. Hello. Some sort of like shape in the foreground. It's probably too much. Yeah, I'm kind of missing something here. Like this space feels like way too light, so I want to put something on the left side. The right side kind of feels okay, but the left side needs like a foreground element. It's obviously up to you what you want to place there, but yeah. This one is really nice though. Like this composition, the way that you kind of have like the curve coming into it. That's going to be really cool. The one thing that you have to be careful of here though is if you start adding yeah, if you basically start adding these types of like fences, right, around like the whole thing, that kind of cuts into your composition with the door. So I would be careful, if that is the plan, that you might have to shift your camera just a little bit to compensate for the fact that those are still coming in, if that is the plan of adding them, right? But yeah, otherwise I think you're doing good. So yeah, awesome work. Great start. Glad to see you back, Will. Glad to see you back. Let's keep it moving. This train is rolling. Jeju is next. How can I break up the scene? Thank you. It's a home time rival match. Gets really intense. Very important to win. That is awesome. Let's see. So a couple of questions here. So how can I break up the scenes texturing, specifically trim sheet, if there's a better way than what I have currently planned? Let's see. There's a whole bunch of breakdown stuff as well that's included. Oh god, you want me to go through a list? Oh. Let's have a look at that later on then. So the floor has an obvious silhouette to the wooden plank, so I'm sculpting several lengths for a modular kit. Same for the wooden walls. Okay. Oh, these are just notes, I think. The main boat asset actually needs geometry to get a nice layered wood look. Is it better to texture it uniquely? Or is it better to get... You can't texture a boat of this size uniquely. Like, you just don't have that option. So you will have to get away with potentially using like a wooden trim sheet and then just making it out of geometry, right? So the way that you would do it, I mean, speaks for itself basically, but you would basically just model all these kind of like individual parts, give them like a nice normal with like weighted normals or something like that with a little bevel, and then just slap like a wood trim sheet on it. Or it could even be like a wood tileable texture, you know? And then put some extra love and detail into these like wooden knots or whatever, like that's holding it together. And have those somewhere on an atlas. That could be cool. All this wood will be under one trim sheet, and the planks will be a dirt and stone tileable. Yeah. That sounds good to me. This is a bit of a later worry, but due to the odd camera angle, I had to really scale down and sheet the torch on the left to match the rendered reference. Should I keep it, or should I follow the isometric 2D reference the artist has? Oh no, I would honestly just keep real world references, or like keep real world measurements. But the thing is, so you have like another torch here, right? So if you want to have it smaller, you just move it back into the scene, right? And you kind of have the scale that way, just by like perspective depth. So you could honestly keep this one and just remove the one in the foreground, because they kind of serve the same purpose, right? Let's have a look at that list then. I mean, we're just gonna do like a quick pass on this, because I have no clue where everything is on this scene anyway. So it's gonna be pretty tricky. So let's see. So you got different types. You got wood and metal. We got a mallet. We got a chisel. Papers. Book piles. Book piles. I don't even know where the book piles are. Is that this stuff here? You can barely see it. A carved. And then the Viking bow is unique. We're not going to do that unique. The leather cover would be unique, especially this part of it though. And then the rest can be a titleable. And then the wolf fur rug. What the hell is that one? Oh, these guys. Yeah, I guess you can make them unique. I would potentially just have like a couple of assets. Yeah, I would make like a couple more assets potentially unique. Potentially. Because there is an opportunity here for let's say, hey, I'm gonna do an additional shot that is gonna be focused on this, right? So I'm gonna put like an additional camera here that is gonna focus on this workbench. That would be cool, right? Just to have that in the scene as like a potential detail shot. It depends on like the scope of the scene yourself, right? So you have to kind of decide that for yourself. But there could be an opportunity here for like in a detail shot with like a couple of unique assets. That could be really cool. But yeah, I mean, the list looks good. I don't really have anything that jumps out to me as like, ooh, no, I wouldn't do that. But I bet you that this is going to change, which is normal, right? Like lists change, plans change as you're like developing it. So that is all good. So yeah. You're saying you once motivated me to learn modeling and texturing. Well, I've learned a lot since then, so thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. But now a new pain for me is ZBrush. Yeah. I mean, you're not gonna, well, you're gonna make like the trim sheets, right? But that is honestly not too big of a deal. When it comes to ZBrush, you can do a lot with just masks and stencils and brushes and all that kind of stuff. It is relatively easy to make like good looking wood that is going to be used on a trim sheet. Relatively easy. Depending how much you want to show off, right? Hey, Alexander. Morning, morning. Hope you're doing well. I don't know if this is the Alexander that I know, that I worked with, or not. That would be awesome. Would love to have you here. It's been a while. But yeah, cool. Thank you, Jeju. Was that it? Let me just double check here. Yeah. There's a free pack with like 70 wood brushes on ArtStation. Oh yeah, there's a lot of really good resources. But yeah. Best of luck, Jeju. I'm looking forward to seeing this come together. It's going to be great. A great pick of a concept as well. Love it. There's a question in the chat. Is it okay to render your portfolio environments in Unreal path tracing, or do studios only like to see your stuff in Lumen? It kind of depends on what it... It kind of depends on what it is, I guess. It's a good question. I don't think it matters too much. Oh, is that true though? No, I think it does. So the only reason why I say that it does is because path tracing is kind of this weird thing where it is so expensive to run, right? Even if you try to do it in like Cyberpunk and all that kind of stuff. Like it's definitely not like real-time performance just yet. That I feel like you should just try to do it in Lumen before doing path tracing. Just because, yeah, I don't know. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on that though. I would argue that in environments, if you're doing full environments, the difference is probably not going to be worth the hassle. If you're doing a singular prop and you want to get like a really kick-ass render, you can do like path tracing or like ray tracing or something like that, and that stuff is going to look like way better for smaller detailed stuff. But on the grand scheme of things, you'll see like a slight difference, but it's not worth the performance increase, I think. Let's see, where are we in the lists? Sergey is next. Where is Sergey? Oh fuck, I closed another one. Dang it. Where's Sergey? There we go. And then who else did we close? We still have like a couple of people. Unfortunately not that Alex you're probably thinking of. Dang it. Okay, thanks for your answers. Yeah, no worries. That one was yeah, kind of a tricky one to answer. I've never really thought about that, to be honest. Lumen, dun dun dun. Yes, whether you like it or not, everyone's using it. Lucky You is saying, hello, I'm new here, but how do you determine an asset should have its own texture rather than using a trim sheet or an atlas texture? The quickest way to do that is by importance to the scene. So if an asset is like really important to the scene and it's not like huge in scale, give it its own asset, give it its own texture, because giving an asset its own texture is just the quickest way to get from like 0 to 100 without having to deal with like all the technical issues that you might have with trim sheets and the limitations when it comes to visually, right? So that would be my 2 cents there. Cool. Let's keep this train moving because we still have quite a lot of people. Jesus. We're gonna have to blast through this a little bit quicker, or else I'm gonna have to skip out on people, which I don't want to do. So we're gonna skip on general feedback. So is painting the walls is painting the walls idea a good one? With it, I've tried to break up the dull color of the whole scene. Oh yeah, the painting of the walls that you have in the back. That's a great idea. Yeah, that's awesome. You don't even have to like paint the walls in like a completely different color, right? Because that might go against like how we think about like Greek architecture or Roman architecture. But just having a slightly different color can already help. Is the crane that I just blocked out too much from a compositional standpoint? The main reason I decided to add it there is to add to the story. No, that could be cool. I mean, what you could do is have like a couple of blocks. It's like on a platform, right? Like hanging over here or something like that. And then make it look like they're rebuilding the scene. That could be interesting. You're gonna have to find a way to like block out like some of the background here though. So that would be something to kind of think about already. I like the idea of the stew statues towards the entrance, but I do feel like the one on the right is obstructing the entrance too much. What do you think? If it is, then what can you do, right? This is a classical example of like, okay, if you think it is, what are the options here? What are the options that I think about immediately? This temple is like blown to shit anyway. Cool. I'm just gonna cut down the statue here and just basically only have the leg standing, and now it's done, right? Just remove the top of it and that solves the issues. Or you could maybe just have it like toppled over and we're looking at like debris that is just like scattered down here, right? That could be another option. So yeah, that one is solved pretty quick as well. You got 3 column pieces in front contributing to the foreground. Since they are so close to the camera, do you suggest making the fluting the vertical carving as geometry or keep them as normal detail? Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely put more detail in them if they're going to be up close. So adding like geometry in these guys, definitely helpful. Because that's, before I even read the post, that was like the one thing that I was like, ooh, I would definitely add like more geo or something like that there. Especially on the silhouette, right? So for example, this guy, very noticeable because it is the silhouette of the object. So yeah, definitely. Good catch though. Keep in mind that you want to have some sort of color similarity between all the surfaces, right? So the color difference is a little bit too much right now between all the different surfaces. Because you got some like gray here, you got reddish here, you got orange over here. We're starting to pull in like a bunch of different directions. We need to keep cohesion between all the surfaces a bit more. Yeah. Great stuff, Sergey. Great stuff. As I said before, we're already over time anyway, so we're gonna skip on the general feedback. So yeah. Some colors are placeholders. I changed the workflow a bit. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Cool little update though. I like all the brickwork. I like all the work that you've done on the scene already. So coming along really nicely. Awesome job. Next person, Justin. Let's see. Decided to go back to my hero asset and make some minor adjustments to it. Where's Justin in the list here? Make some minor adjustments to it. I looked into a specific kind of rust called bronze disease for reference, and I wanted to further accentuate the highlights of the platina by adding a noise along the edges of the damaged blah blah blah. I would like to get some clarification with regards to rust. Is it technically a metallic, or because of the chemical reaction occurring, it's no longer considered a metallic? Is it the roughness that helps show those details? I feel like this uncertainty towards this knowledge is holding me back in making this texture stand out. I think honestly it might be the opposite. I think you're making the texture stand out just too much, you know? So for example, if you look at the vibrancy of the color here compared to what we see here, right, I get that sometimes it's really, really vibrant, but we have to make a decision when it comes to like a game perspective, right? And like a visual perspective. I would honestly go for something like this. Because this is good, but this is too much. And I feel like that's what it's currently looking like. So I would definitely reduce the intensity of this color, because it just feels fake. And then your question about rust. Well, that is a unique property about bronze, right? Chad, feel free to call me out if it's not so, but I think bronze doesn't rust, it just oxidizes, right? And the oxidization, that is what we're seeing on this material, right? That's why it kind of turns bluish greenish, because it doesn't rust, it just oxidizes. Yeah, so in that case, you don't have to be worried about rust necessarily, right? Because I'm thinking, why? I'm also thinking at this point, like, why we're even talking about rust, because I don't even see rust on the bell anyway. Oh, maybe you're talking about the transition between oxidization though. Yeah, but in that case, so this is a part that can be applied to rust as well. So if you have bare metal, that is going to be white, and then anything that kind of comes on top of it, that's going to go to black, right? Just in terms of like metalness values, right? So if you have painted metal, that's going to be black. If you have rusted metal, that's going to be black. If you have oxidized metal, that's going to be black as well. So just in terms of like values, I think you're correct, right? But I think it's just the intensity of the whole thing. And there's also something funky going on with the normal map at this point. Yeah, there's just too much noise coming in on the normal map. That would be something to check as well. I don't know if this thing has detail normals. I don't think it does, but thank you, stranger. That is a good piece overall. The normal is too intense on the belt. Yep, I 100% agree. Thanks for bringing it up again. But yeah, it is noisy. I think, honestly, if you turn it down just a little bit, kind of massage it in, kind of like it feels more like here, and then turn down like the detailed normals, I think you got a winner on your hands. It's just, right now, everything feels real nice. And then you have just like the over-exaggeration of the bell in the middle. It's kind of just a disconnect between the two. Yeah. Let's see. Wanted to further accentuate the highlights of the patina by adding... Sorry, I didn't read this. So by adding a bit of noise along the edges of the damaged areas, as well as along the edges of the rust surface. What would get your thoughts on the current state? Okay, that's basically what we talked about already. But yeah. Yeah, so basically refer back to what we just said like a little bit earlier. But yeah. We're getting close to the end, Justin. Close to the end. I love what you've done with this area. Just the bigger shapes, the medium shapes, like the small shapes, like this stuff is really, really working well together. So massive improvements here already. Again, always, I think this is like the biggest thing for you personally, right? Keep thinking about noise. Try to avoid just like a general noise on any surface, no matter what it looks like. Even if it would be realistic, we need to find a way to make it more visually appealing. Yeah, thanks, Justin. Good little updates. Next up, McVal. Let's have a look. Just a couple of quick things. So I removed like the thumbnail for the lighting strike as well. I think that's pretty good, pretty self-explanatory. The building generator, I'm not too keen on like the over editing that's happening here, right? Where you have like, oh, building generator, like this kind of cutout happening. It kind of feels like very cliche, very I don't know. I am personally not a fan of it. So if you feel very like cliche, I guess. I always prefer just like simple elegance when it comes to like basically the study you had before, right? Like the lighting strike is just like, hey, lighting strike, real-time VFX, it's right there. That's it. I think what you try to do here is showcasing like a before and after, right? I think that could be cool. What I would do in that case is have like a gradient transition between like the block out and the final thing maybe, and that spans the entire width or something like that. Or maybe try something else there, but I don't feel like this is the best way of like showcasing it necessarily. Maybe I just show the buildings in the text instead of the block out stage. Yeah, so I know that that's a concept, but I mean, I struggle with this one myself as well. It's always hard to kind of like pull this one off effectively. Because I feel You could try the gradient potentially, but even with that one, I'm kind of hesitant. I am honestly, if you just have like a building generator in Houdini or whatever, right? Like if you just do something like that, and they see the end result, that is what's gonna make people click, right? Like having a block out there, like a transformation, I'm not sure if that is gonna convince like an additional people. I'm not saying I'm not fully convinced about either or, right? But it's something to kind of play around with. I would usually stay until the end of the stream, but it's pretty late. Oh, yeah. Good night, Sergey. What, like, best of luck with the team challenges. As you can tell, it's getting pretty late for me because I'm kind of slurring my words already. You could do the transformation in the video instead. Well, yeah, that would be like more appropriate, right? Like a transformation in the video or a GIF or something like that, showcasing it, for sure. But if we're just talking about a still image, yeah. Very YouTube-y. Yeah, it needs like a bunch of like red arrows going towards it as well, right? Let's see. Anything that stands out? What's wrong with the buildings? And do the textures work, or should I continue my search through Mega Scans to find better textures for the walls? Oh, for the walls? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the walls. I mean, so here's the thing, right? Like it works okay from like a distance, but from up close, it just doesn't hold up. That's what I would say. And that's going to make it 1,000 times more trickier. So I would definitely see if you can potentially do something about that, even though that's probably the trickiest suggestion out of all of it. But yeah. I'm still gonna add some billboards, but no major changes. Thank you for your help. Yeah, you're welcome, McFell. I mean, you've done all the hard work. So, good on you, man. Good on you. And we're nearly there. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing this one posted. Let's see. Cool. Best of luck, McFall. Gonna move it on swiftly. We got Camilla. I don't know why I put like a French twist on that, but hey, here we are. I would like to hear your feedbacks on how I can improve my shots in the composition. I need at least a close-up shot and a wider shot as well. So a couple of quick things that we can do here. Igor Shade is finally joining a live stream. That might be because we're running like way over time. So welcome. It's good to have you here. Cool, but like in this first screenshot, like I feel like this one is pretty good. Because we kind of have like all the context in here, right? Like what is kind of missing here is just like a couple of foreground elements. Where maybe you could have like some additional rocks like over here. Maybe dress up like this side a bit. Just have like a couple more things that could help the composition a bit. And then maybe also having the grass like way lower so that we can actually see the path going down it more, right? Because that is going to be like a leading line that we kind of want to use. But currently it just disappears in front of the grass, right? And then when it comes to the placement of some of these assets, it kind of gets in the way of the path itself. So I'm wondering if we can maybe do something different with having like the grindstone up here instead. And then having this like way more open than it currently is. Because we don't want to put like interesting stuff down here if we want the main focus point to be here. Right, so we kind of want to cluster things together if we can. And what do you think of the current lighting? I feel like you can really emphasize some of the elements here. So try pulling in like people a little bit more. Let's see if we can quickly do. What is that? Oh, that's the bottom one. Let's maybe do something like that. Ooh, it's a little bit too much. I'm gonna make a duplicate of these two as well. Shit. Oh, rasterize. There we go. Okay. Because we kind of want to pull people in, right? So we want to have a bigger emphasis on some of the elements that we want people to actually focus on. So the door, for example, we want to emphasize that comparatively to the rest of the environment, right? And then we can kind of go in and be more specific. So for example, an example of what I mean is this foreground piece of light, I would try to get rid of that so that we're really pushing all the values more towards like this area. And then I'm just gonna put like a stronger vignette in there as well. Let's do midtones. Let's do shadows even. Gonna head off to bed now. Good night. Good night, McFell. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, as always. And best of luck on the project. Cool, but we're gonna try and like really contrast up like the whole scene a little bit, right? Then we're gonna do a comparison here. So you can see what I'm always trying to do, right? Like when we do like these lighting comparisons, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to guide you more towards the thing that matters in the scene. So that's why the symbol on the door and the two lights next to the door, they're the most important thing. So that's why I kind of ignore like the window on the first floor. I don't care about that one. I want you to focus on the door instead. So we can kind of see what that does, right? And obviously, like in the engine, you would have like different levers that you can pull, right? So I would increase the intensity of the emissive on the door, right? So the emissive on this guy, and this guy goes up. Oh, that's going to be annoying. And then the guy that's behind here goes down, right? Because we want people to focus on this side rather than on the first floor. I'll be back. Thank you so much, Pailados. And thank you so much for all the support. That's awesome. You can join with the link in the description if you want to. I will tell you now, it is a paid Discord, and this is like a paid thing that I do on like a weekly basis. But yeah, if you're still eager to join, you're more than welcome to. So yeah, we want to focus people on like the actual like meat and the potatoes of the scene, right? So that's what I tried to do here. So adding a little bit more contrast, bringing out the values a little bit more, because we wanna get rid of everything kind of feeling the same. We want to push people towards something, right, in a very subtle way. Yeah, great job, Camille. I'm looking forward to the next update. Next up is Darson. Darson is making a mother bot incubation room, planning to have a corridor as well, as we're using some meshes that I already have. How is the overall composition? Looking to have it feel epic and dangerous. Not sure if that conveys it. So that is this scene that we're looking at. I mean, I guess we're talking mostly about this scene then. Yeah, I mean, it looks cool. It does look, how did you call it? Like epic and dangerous. I feel like the scale of it is working in its favor already. If we try to emphasize some of the different elements in the scene a little bit more, right? So for example, you have these ropes. If we make them smaller, that is going to make this thing at the end feel bigger, right? Because we always compare things to each other. So if you just have like a small cable that kind of goes towards it, that's going to make this thing feel way bigger than it currently is, right? And you can have like the bigger cables in the back, but I would probably keep like smaller cables in the foreground, kind of leading towards it. A bigger thing, so that is the first part, right? So in terms of proportions. In terms of proportions, that's what we kind of talked about it. And that's just like an example here, right? Another thing to look at is the lighting as well. So right now we want the focus to be here, right? So that's the focal point. How many more do we have to do? 2 more people after this. Okay. So that's the focal point. However, these guys are dragging a whole bunch of attention to themselves. These guys as well. And this guy too. So think about it in terms of hierarchy, right? So you want your brightest point to be the focus. And then you kind of build like a hierarchy down, right? So let's say these guys, they're still pretty important. So let's make them not as bright as like the red light, but have them like way lower down, because also they are super big, right? They are super big, and they will, just by the size of them, like draw a lot of attention to them. I would honestly dial them down to like 10 or 20% of their current intensity to see if that helps. Because if not, we have to do something with the shader to kind of, I don't know, make it still emissive, but also not have it like super in your face, right? But yeah, we want to build a hierarchy from like the brightest spot to the dimmest spot. And that hierarchy is going to be decided by your focal point, right? So yeah, a couple of quick things there. Thank you for being here, Connor. I appreciate it. Do you think another color for the really bright ones would have been another viable solution? They call too much attention to themselves color-wise. Yeah, that is another good point, actually. So there's a lot of different colors going on, which sometimes if you have 2 dominant colors and you have a contrast between them, that is, Pilatus is bringing up the same thing as well. That is already like interesting to balance, right? But if we add an orange and blues and all that kind of stuff, it becomes very unwieldy. So sometimes simplicity is key, right? The orange light in the canister will have a differentiator, which I think will reduce the intensity. Yeah, it has to reduce the intensity by a lot, though. Maybe add a lot of smaller cables. Yeah, that could be cool. You could honestly have like even like smaller cables just like dangling from the bigger cable, right? Kind of like twisting around it. I always like that. It kind of adds to like the chaotic nature, right? That this is like strung up by like a mad scientist or something like that. The orange light in the canisters will have a differentiator, which I think will reduce the intensity by half. Wait, the orange light in the canisters. So here's the thing, right? So, oh, if you're talking about the orange light, these guys, because I mean, we want to reduce this one a little bit as well because it kind of feels very fake. But if you can find a light source that kind of keeps like that same intensity, that would be really interesting, right? So, yeah. But yeah, that's about it. Keep iterating on the lighting. And also a tip that we brought up earlier, have physical lighting, right? Find ways that you can embed that. I think for most of it, it's all right. For this guy, usually the vat itself is not going to be emissive. It's probably going to be a light down here that's going to be lighting up like the whole tube, right? Which can work in your favor in this one, right? So yeah. Cool stuff, Darson. Thank you so much for posting. I hope that was helpful. I think the composition itself, where you have like your leading lines, you have the importance, you have like the low camera angle. I think that's all working in its favor. So yeah, in terms of like the raw composition of the elements, I think you're in a good spot. Are you doing a mentorship, by the way? Yes, but I tend to rarely open mentorship slots, especially full ones, because there's a lot of stuff going on, especially now. So unfortunately, I can't guarantee whenever the next slot is opening up. Unfortunately, Payatos. But thank you for asking, though. Last two for today. So we have Giovani. Wait, no, we have Planin. Planin first. I started this Japanese school environment a few weeks ago and I'm looking to get some overall feedback. I'm sorry, maybe I'll pick out some quick things, but yeah, I don't want to do like overall feedback. I just don't have the time anymore. So let me see if I can pick up some quick things. I'm trying to get more of a stylized style and get somewhat close to my references. Do the materials work nicely together? And why do my god rays seem blurry? The god rays seem blurry. That is a good question to ask in troubleshooting, honestly, because like I said, like it's been a while since I used Unreal. I can have a guess that you have to increase like your ray amount when it comes to your lighting potentially, but I have no idea where that is. I don't even have like a pointer to like point you towards. Unfortunately, because it's been a while since I used Unreal myself, especially when it comes to specific things like this. So maybe increase the ray amount. This feels like I'm just saying some random rumbo jumbo. Question mark? But you were asking, how do the materials work together, right? Yeah, you got some cool stuff going on, especially where like the roughness is visible, right? Where you kind of have the like stylization going on. That works really well. It's just in some areas, like it's not that noticeable. So for example, this area feels really nice, right? I love this area and the way that the wall feels in that area, but it doesn't work that well here. And you could fix that by like putting in like fake, or like you could put in some like fake lighting or like reflection probe or something like that here, right? To kind of emphasize the roughness there. But like these walls, they kind of feel like really flat. Especially compared to the other surfaces, right? We're getting some like really nice interplay with the light and the roughness and the reflections over here. Same thing on the ceiling as well. Like the way that like picks up the light that's being bounced around works really well. So yeah. So that's looking great. But yeah, it does me, because that's always what's gonna happen, right? Is it's an act of comparison, right? So I'm comparing like really nice surfaces compared to like flat surfaces. And maybe that flat surface by itself might feel good, but because you've done such a good job of like the floor and the ceiling itself, that's where I'm like, oh, you can do better on like this area, for example. And for example, I don't know if this one is textured yet. It doesn't really look like it. At least not at this point. Because it doesn't have the same treatment yet. But yeah. Overall, really nice start though. Like it. I like it a lot. Okay, this is going to be a nitpick, and I see that it's even like an issue in the concept. The alignment of the paneling when it comes to the walls just doesn't line up, right? Like usually you would probably have like a lip. It's like a lip around the top or something like that. Something like that, that always helps. It's the small details in these things that like really help convey the idea. Same thing on this side as well. That's a fair point. Lots of meshes don't have materials, especially the props. How would you go about breaking up the meshes? Maybe cook them up a little bit. Yeah, I think what you can do with that is just play with very subtle like normal information, right? Even in the concept. So if we have a look at the concept, I can just drag that in here. That is neat. The more you know, even in the concept, you kind of have like these subtle lines, right? Like just subtle splashes or subtle, yes, subtle like roughness variations on like the surface as well. I mean, not all of them, but like some of the surfaces, they have like, yeah, some like very subtle stuff happening to it. It could be cool. Because it's like, I feel like this style is just all about subtlety, right? So like they have a texture on here, but it's very subtle. So yeah, that would be something to look into. I can maybe place a strip of metal railing on the upper end of the wall so to fix the ceiling issue. Yeah, sure, you can do that. Or any type of plastic or anything like that you have like lying around. But like metal would probably work too. You just, with metal, you might have to watch out that it's not like too distracting, potentially. That's the only thing that I can think of, but yeah. Cool though. Really cool scene as well. So thank you so much for sharing that, Planin. I appreciate it. Last one for today. From Giovani. Giovani got some feedback from Magma already. Appreciate that, Magma. Really do. I'd like to know what you think of the changes since the last feedback, and also what you think that I can improve this part? Like the let me read that again. Oh my god. And also, what do you think that I can make to improve this part? The debris, the wood, the broken ceiling, both the visual quality and also the storytelling, if that isn't much. I think when it comes to these elements, it is more about like the attention to detail, right? You've got like a really solid base now, but that also means that like we're pushing the bar higher, right? And what I mean with the bar higher is, okay, we've got like this geometry, cool, but I want to see like little bits of splintering, right? And then also having like a slight curve to like the wooden pieces, because this is like a very wet environment, right? So these things are going to be bent up and crooked all over the place, because now they're just, I mean, for lack of a better term, they're just sticks, right? They're just straight things. I want to see like some crookedness and some bendiness coming in as well. And then also think about, you kind of already have some stuff on the floor, but it looks like neatly organized. I would honestly have a think about, okay, this roof collapsed. How did it collapse, right? So thinking about like, okay, you got like the frame here. So let's see, maybe there's like a piece of the frame that's still like up to the door, and then the rest of the frame is like on the floor. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to build a puzzle of like, okay, what is missing here and how did it fall down, right? Like, did it fall down flat? Did it fall down at like an angle? Because then maybe if it fell down at an angle, we have like more stuff that's kind of just like leaning down here. Right, and then we maybe have like a less stuff over here. So we're creating some asymmetry when it comes to the destruction in this scene. Right? Which always looked like really interesting, because now, before what was happening is that everything was sort of like aligned, but now we kind of have like an offset coming from like this side. Or we could even like exaggerate that even more, right? So yeah, really looking at like natural destruction and how that occurs, and then seeing how we can, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the elements that I'm given, and I'm trying to like emphasize the composition with it, right? So I'm trying to add like a little bit of an imbalance in the scene, which could add to the feel of it. And then also what this is gonna do, which is kind of a happy accident, right, is that you're kind of blocking off like more of this section as well. Which kind of creates this thing of like, oh, we're forcing you more towards like this side. Plus, it's also going to look like more interesting down here because we have more of the damage like spilling lower, right? Oh yeah, don't worry about it, Giovani. Don't worry about it. These views are good enough. So yeah, that would be like the major thing, is really trying to take like the destruction up a notch, right? And think about, so what are some of the things that we said? So asymmetry, natural decay and destruction. Natural decay and destruction. Oh, cause and effect. The last two kind of go hand in hand, right? But I kind of want to see like, okay, this was like a giant leak that came down. So we're seeing like a bunch of like moisture with like a bunch of planks on the floor here. Because think about it, right? So this collapsed because there was like a huge buildup of like moisture over time. This then because of the weight of the moisture and the water that was collecting, this just like slowly decayed, caved in, and then formed like caused the ceiling to collapse, right? So that means that there's also like water damage down here, which probably also spreads on the door and like the side here. Right, so I'm kind of thinking about it in those layers where, okay, what caused it and how is that gonna affect like every layer that comes down above it or down below it, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that's gonna help the composition down here as well, because it's gonna force you more towards the right as well, so that's gonna be cool. So yeah. Did people come in and clean up? I think there is a lot of stuff here happening, right? But it's just not defined enough, or like the link between the two elements is kind of missing, right? It's just like, oh, the ceiling collapsed and it's kind of on the floor, but it got overgrown. So yeah, I think that is what The Last of Us does so beautifully, right? Like, they studied and they put so much time into like actually looking at like natural decay that they are the masters of conveying it through the 3D medium, right? Because yeah, a lot of their stuff is like, I can bet you that they're like real nerds in there. Like the environment artists there are probably real nerds and they know exactly how long it takes for like a surface of a certain type to decay under like water damage, right? And how long it takes for like a roof to collapse under like the weight of like water pressure or something like that. I bet you that they studied that in depth because it looks really good. Cool. Let's see. Was there anything else? I don't think so. Maybe the first render is shaping up really nicely. I agree. Yeah, the first render is looking really good. And then you got the second render to kind of back it up as well. But yeah, I would say awesome work, man. Awesome work, Giovani. Yeah. Yeah, man. I just want to say, I remember the first Whip Wednesday that we did together, right? When you were making the stylized project that was, oh God, what was it? It had like the front of a car and it was like a water in front of it or something like that. And now you're doing something like this. It's not been that long, right? But yeah, really, really well done, man. I like that you added the furniture. I had a lot of fun creating that with a trim sheet. Oh yeah, yeah, it was cool, man. It was cool. Yeah, just have it like slightly crooked, you know, or maybe like fallen down even, where this thing in the back literally fell down, dunk, and just like is at an angle, like on this here, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, and basically, I mean, if we're talking about like these frames, like nothing is straight, right? Like all these frames are going to be like at an angle, like slightly at an angle. So that will be my last tip for tonight. Nothing is straight. The R-Station challenge? Yeah, the R-Station challenge, that's right. Cool. Thank you so much for posting your work, Giovani. Thank you for participating again. I'm gonna take a quick break after this and then I'll post everyone's work up with a link to the video as well. But yeah, that's gonna be it for tonight. We ran way over time, even though I tried to do it as quick as I could. I just don't want to skip on giving people some good advice, you know? It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. So I'm not going to make it any longer than it needs to be. I appreciate everyone being here, everyone that participated. It's always lovely to be able to be in this position and be able to give back in this way. Camille said, good evening. That's thanks for your feedbacks. Yeah. Thanks for participating for everyone, right? That being said, I wish you all a nice evening. And if you want to join, you know how to do this by now. Go into the description, join our lovely community, and I will see you next week. Bye, people.